one.
Yes, this is ZV-E10 Mark II. It came out it's like about $1,000. It is being touted as like this massive vlogger camera. With a lot of the built-in same stuff that we're seeing in that like really what was the Lumix camera that started all the drama? S9. It reminds me of Sony's version of the S9.
Yeah.
It's got built-in LUTs, which is like a big thing. I guess that's like the new big feature. It's like to have built-in presets onto your camera. But it does have an interchangeable lens, crop sensor. So think kind of like the ZV-E1, but instead of full frame, it's a crop sensor version of it. But a big vlogging type camera. Now, I'll be honest with you. I don't really care. That's not what I'm waiting on Sony to release. It's not what I thought we would get from Sony at this point. I think Sony needs another big release. They need a big release. And now, I'll be honest. I would love for it to be an A7S IV, but the way that cameras are currently moving, I don't know if an S4 would make as much noise as they would want it to. And I think a A7 V, so that $2,000, $2,200 camera, hybrid camera, would probably be something that the masses would be more interested in than an S series camera. And then if we don't get an S series camera, then just do away with the S series line altogether and just let the FX line just hold down that area. Because
now we might be tempting Sony. I might be tempting Sony. But when we look at 2024, they came out with the Burano. They came out with the A9 III. They've come out with this EV10 II. To say that they haven't had a big year, not a big sales year, but a big release year.
Yeah. They've
already dropped what I would consider to be massive bombs with very little effect. It is Sony, so if anybody could manufacture something before the end of 2024, it's them. And maybe that's why it's tempting. But like, I feel like Sony's taking their shot.
I feel like I think that, so first of all, let's be little transparent here with the whole process. Like, there's no way if a camera is coming out this year that they're figuring out what that camera is going to be.
Oh, for sure.
It was figured out 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing is like, I believe that Sony has reached like peak saturation, which is like good and bad. Like, they have so many cameras to do everything. You want a full frame vlogging camera? ZV-E1. You want a crop sensor vlogging camera? ZV-E10 Mark II. Like, you want a A7 IV? We got it. You want a small A7 IV? A7C II. You want a high megapixel A7C II? A7CR. And we haven't even talked about any of the A7S IV or S3 or A7 IV or A7Rs or even the 9 or the 1. Like, there's so many Sony cameras. Oh, yeah. And so when we start talking about, like what we talked about with Canon, can you release something today that just moves the needle? Is there even enough tech that is in existence right now to move the needle? I don't know if there is. And so when Sony releases another camera, I feel like their audience is just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool, but I'm all right right now. Oh, okay, yeah, that's cool, but I'm all right right now.
I think people are waiting for that A7S IV. I think so.
Are y'all waiting for the A7S IV?
Because I think that they haven't upgraded.
Ron said it. Ron said there's too many options.
You got too many options.
And like, the thing I think about, when it comes to Sony is like, there is something called paralysis by analysis.
Yes.
And then there's also something else that Sony has been sort of the king of. And I don't know if this is like, I don't know how you beat this. But like, Sony has had the situation of releasing a camera, you pre-order that camera, and then you have to wait 3 months for it to actually come out. And during that 3-month time period, another camera comes out. gets announced.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's like, do I cancel my order and order the new one, or do I get this new one? And so you just get to a point where you're like, I'm just going to sit back and wait.
Yeah.
And so where, yes, it feels like Sony has released a lot of cameras this year, although it doesn't also feel like they didn't release a lot because there's not been a whole lot of press around it except for initial embargoes.
Yeah.
I think it's just because there's so many cameras out there already. And for the first time, Sony is finding might be a good problem to have, but they're finding a hard time figuring out what corner of the market they haven't already tapped.
Yeah.
And I feel like they have tapped them all.
Yeah, I do think this is what's super hard. I think that if you are A7S III owner, I do think that those people are waiting, and they've been waiting. I don't know that they would have upgraded. And I mean, obviously, chat, if you're a Sony user, let me know if you're still rocking with the A7S III or if you've upgraded. And if you've upgraded, then absolutely, I don't think there's anything that's going to drop this year that is going to make you buy something from Sony. Unless you just are a glutton for punishment.
No, I think if you got an A7S IV and you're currently rocking an A7S III,
but
those people will upgrade.
No, I'm saying if you upgraded.
Okay.
Yeah, if you upgraded from the A7S III and you upgraded to the 5 or the whatever, unless you're a glutton for punishment, you'll do it. But I feel like the A7S III users have waited because that camera is still golden.
Yeah.
To this day is golden. And so there hasn't been a huge reason to abandon ship from the A7S III. And I think they've been waiting to literally to reclaim that low light perfection sort of deal. I think that if the A7S IV comes out and is just a monster with dynamic range and ISO, I think that they'll upgrade. But outside of that, I don't know that there's a camera, even if it's a flagship. I think it's going to just be like the A9 III, where it's like your price is so high that I just don't know that anybody is going to move the needle or anyone's going to care.
I think that that's the one thing that Sony has done really well, but has also become the hindrance to them, is that they have released so many cameras to hit so many different people. But then you get to a place where you're like, well, I'm kind of like that, but I'm also kind of like this. So I'm kind of here. So wait, what do I buy?
Yeah.
And you're just like, then you start thinking, wait, what I have is fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay. I think there are the cameras right now that I look at and I say, these are what's winning for Sony.
Mm-hmm.
I think the A7 IV right now is a big camera. And I think a lot of people stuck, and I saw somebody in the chat say they went with the A7. They still are rocking their A7 III. And I think the A7 III was a fantastic camera for the value.
Mm-hmm.
The A7 IV was kind of a miss.
Yes.
So I think there are a lot of A7 III users who could use a A7 V. And I think there's a lot of A7 IV users, because I tested that camera. It overheats. The readout is slow. Like
white balance is funny.
White balance gets weird. I think there's a lot of A7 IV users and A7 III users that would be willing to upgrade to an A7 V. That's the first camera I think that can move it. The second camera that could make a big wave, I think, would be an FX3 Mark II. And the reason why I say that is an the camera that I saw a lot of A7S III users jumping ship to was actually an FX3, which is basically the exact same camera, just in a different body. But that different body came with the XLR inputs, and it had a lot of video. Like now it's getting like shutter angle and things like that, which is making it lean a little bit more video focused. I think if we get an FX3 Mark II, I think original FX3 users will jump ship to it. And I think A7S III users will jump ship to it.
My only question is with the FX3, and I'll admit it, it feels like a near, not perfect, like in the sense of it's the best camera ever, but like for what it is, a near perfect camera. What are you going to do in a Mark II? What features are like that the FX3 is missing?
I feel like the A7S lineup will always be small megapixels because it's in a lineup with the A7R and the A7 IVs, right? The A7 series. But I feel like with the FX series, you could start to push those megapixels up and go from 4K to 8K. but still stay video focused.
Yeah.
Now, that is where I feel like Sony has not really done anything in the video space, is have a high megapixel video focused camera, because they normally stay pretty low megapixel for their video focused cameras because they want to have the better low light performance. But I think if they're willing to sacrifice a little bit on the low light performance, they could do that. Now, I'm gonna jump out on a limb here. You ready?
Yeah.
This is a wish. I don't think it'll happen, but this is a wish. I want to see Sony bring that global shutter to one of their FX cameras.